Cool. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, cool. Thanks, Al. So as Al said, I'm Andy, Senior Software Engineer on BBC iPlayer. I've actually been at the BBC for 4 years, and for the past 2 years, I've been an accessibility champion, trying to make the accessibility on iPlayer better than what it was. Now I'm going to start by asking you to cast your mind back to 1997, when the World Wide Web was just taking off. Tim Berners-Lee said, if I can get to the next slide. There's the mouse. My laptop's racing. Start the slides again. Okay, cool. So, you were still back in 1997. Still waiting. So Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, said this. The power of the web is in its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. And that's obviously still relevant today, if not more so, with so many big, interactive, and rich websites on the internet. And a recent poll by the Department for Work and Pensions actually said that disability affects 1 in 5 people in the UK. And that's only those with long-standing disabilities, so doesn't include temporary or obviously definitely not situational. However, 70% of UK websites are actually inaccessible. And that 70% only includes those that expose the business to significant reputational or legal risk. So 75% of websites are really inaccessible. Over the next 30 minutes, you're going to find out 3 things about what we're doing in iPlayer, how we build accessibility in from the start through components and different features we make, how we're testing what we're making, and how we've developed a team culture around accessibility. So let's start off with how we're building accessibility in from the start and have a little chat about components. So you might have heard the word components thrown around quite a lot. What we do is build documented components so that our developers can write simple code to create accessible web pages. So essentially, we've got these components with documentation, and built into them is all the accessibility, which leaves the developers to create their new feature without having to think too much about accessibility. So let's have a look at a few of those components. So the first one is this hero header. You might have seen this pop up recently on iPlayer, as we've rebranded some of the pages. What it does is sets whatever you pass in as the title to actually be the H1 on the page, so the heading level 1. So this means there's always a main heading on the page. We've also got a responsive image component. So you may or may not know that in HTML, the alt attribute on an image tag specifies the alternative text for when an image hasn't been loaded and it's read out by screen readers, for example. If you miss off the alt attribute on an image, this normally causes the screen reader to read out the image file name, which is not very useful.
/P050QM1 CJPG image.
If your file is named something like that, it's definitely not very useful. So what our component does, if you don't pass in an alt string, what it does is actually just default to an empty string rather than leaving it off, which means the screen readers will just ignore it and just assume it's a decorative image. Another component we've got is this drop-down component. So it's essentially a select box underneath the hood. If you have a select box without a label, it's very difficult to understand what the select is doing. So this drop-down might sound something like this.
Feature, menu item, main 1 item.
It just says it's a menu item and says featured, which is the selected text. So you've got no idea what that drop-down is going to do if you change the value. So what we've got on our drop-down is a required property called label. So you have to specify a label for your drop-down. And what this does is it adds a label element next to the select in the markup. So if we add a label for this feature dropdown, it might sound more like this.
Feature. Change sort. Collapsed. Pop-up button main 1 item.
So you can see we've added a label of change sort, and it says it's a pop-up button, so you know you're going to get a drop-down of things, and it's currently collapsed. So this means it's much more accessible. If you're going with a screen reader through the page, you know this drop-down is going to allow you to change the sort of the items on the page. Next up, we've got this section component. What it does is actually render out a section HTML element. And it's also got a property for the array label. When you give it an array label, it actually means it's a named landmark or region on the page. So if you're navigating the page by region, for example, it's much easier to go through it. So for example, if we've got this section on the page and the array label on it was biggest weekend, it would actually read out region, biggest weekend. So it's much easier to go through all the sections on the home page, for example. Another component we've got is this content item. So this is where we link to programs across the website. It's got loads of properties you can pass into it, like the category of the program, the title, the subtitle, synopsis, etc. All this information is rendered in one big A tag, one link, rather than multiple duplicate links. So if you're navigating the page by links, you get one link to each program rather than it repeated for the image and the title, etc. What the component actually does under the hood is it constructs an array label to put on the link to read out all the information in the order that you would read it out if you were reading it visually, and it adds extra contextual words and punctuation. So let's have a look at what it would sound like without that array label.
Link. Comedy Peter K's car share. The finale will it be happy ever after? What has happened to John and Kayleigh since their last journey? And what happens next? 2, 9. Mins available for 2, 6 days.
So it says the category first, whereas you'd probably read out the program first. And then it just waffles through with no punctuation. You've got no idea what's the description, what's the duration, etc. So with the array label added in, it sounds more like this.
Link. Peter K's car share. The finale. Description. Comedy. Will it be happy ever after? What has happened to John and Kayleigh since their last journey? And what happens next? Duration. 2, 9 minutes. Available for 2, 6 days.
So we've got the program name at the beginning, and then it says description. So if you don't want that program, you can just skip straight on to the next one. And then it says the category, and then the subtitle and synopsis, etc. And then at the end, it's got duration, then the duration, then a full stop, and then the availability. So it's much clearer, the separate bits of the information. So we'll look at some features now. We've got an iPlayer. As you probably know, a lot of content is available with audio description and sign language, and all of the content should have subtitles in it. We've also got audio described and signed categories on iPlayer. So if you want to go straight to that kind of content, you can go here. Our editorial team have actually started manually creating these pages now. So they're picking out the best content from iPlayer to go on these pages. And since they've started creating, the click-through rate on these items has actually gone up by 58%. So that shows just how many people are using this and finding this useful. If you watch a program and then leave it halfway through, for example, we now remember what version of the program you're watching. So say you're watching Britain's Best Home Cook, and you leave it with 23 minutes left, and you're watching the signed version. When you come back to iPlayer and click the resume button, we'll take you back to the right point in the signed version, because that's the one you're watching. We've also started using the BBC's new font, BBC Reef. The old fonts we had were Helvetica and Gill Sans, and whilst these worked well in print, they weren't always clear on small digital spaces like a smartphone. This is the new font, BBC Reef. It's designed to be a screen-first font, which should be clearer and easier to read, especially on those smaller devices. You can also now pick the size of the subtitles, thanks to my colleagues in the team that make the player across the BBC website. So we've got a choice of 5 subtitle sizes. So if you want it bigger because you struggle to read the text, you can do that. And if you want it smaller, out the way, so you can watch the video, you can do that as well. We're also trying to make the layout of the site a lot more consistent and simple across the website. On the left, you'll see the iPlayer homepage layout as it was a few months ago. We've got kind of a grid, but some of the content is indented. We've got like double height images and some text. On the right, we've got a much more simple layout, nice grid, all big images and programs, and carousels so you can go left and right and see more content. So we're building all this stuff, but how do we test it? We're going to start off with this quote from Jamie Knight from the BBC. He's actually done a talk here before. He said, "As designers, we disable people when we don't get it right." Well, with the help of automated testing tools, what we can do is more easily spot those times when we haven't got it quite right. So let's have a look at Google Lighthouse. So Lighthouse is an automated tool for checking the quality of your web pages. It's actually powered by Axe Core, their rules engine under the hood. And you can run it on any web page in Chrome from the developer tools. And it's got other audits as well as accessibility. You can test your performance, you can test your progressive web apps, all that kind of stuff. It's got quite a few different things it tests in the accessibility audit. Let's have a look at a few of those. So it checks that background and foreground colors have sufficient contrast ratio. So in this example of the pagination component on iPlayer, it actually flagged up that the grey one on the pink background doesn't actually pass contrast checks. And it gives us a full explanation. It says background and foreground colors do not have a sufficient contrast ratio. Low contrast text is difficult or impossible for many users to read. So to fix this, all we needed to do was change that light grey one to a white one, and that passes the color contrasts. It's important to note, though, that Lighthouse can't always tell you about color contrasts. For example, if you've got a background image, so it can only pick out where you've set a specific foreground and background color in your code. Other things it tests, it checks to see if your buttons have an accessible name. So in this example, we've got a carousel of some items and then some arrow buttons. So in this example, it flagged up that the arrow buttons don't have an accessible name. And it says when a button doesn't have an accessible name, screen readers announce it as button, making it unusable for users who rely on screen readers. So to fix this, we had to just put in an arrow label or some hidden text on that button just to explain that it scrolls the carousel. It also checks that your images have an alt attribute. So in this example, this is the BBC4 collections page. It's actually flagged up that we've forgotten to put an alt attribute on that image. Whoops. And then specifies informative elements should aim for a short, descriptive alternate text. Decorative elements can be ignored with an empty alt attribute. So to fix this, we either need to talk to someone to find out what alt text we should put on that image, or we can just make it an empty alt attribute so this gets ignored. It also checks to make sure your links have a discernible name. So in this screenshot of the iPlayer homepage, you can see a lot of view all links down the right-hand side to each of the groups of content. So I might highlight these and say link text that is discernible, unique, and focusable improves the navigation experience for screen readers. So if you're tabbing through the page, you don't want it to be like view all, view all, view all, because you don't know what you're viewing all of. So to fix this, again, we need some hidden text or an arrow label to say view all box sets, view all drama episodes, for example. It's actually really simple to run Google Lighthouse. Just open up the Chrome Developer Tools in Chrome, go to the Audits tab, click the Perform an Audit button. You can then choose the accessibility option, any others you want to run as well. Click Run Audit. It then takes about 20 seconds while it reloads the page and does all the clever stuff under the hood. And eventually it gives you a score out of 100 for how accessible it thinks your website is. So what I did was actually run Google Lighthouse on the home pages of some other UK video on demand services earlier this month. One had 93, which is quite good. One had 76, and one had 46, which isn't that great. I won't say which they are, but you can test them yourself if you want. Then I ran it on iPlayer, and we got 100. Hey. Yes, that's obviously thanks to different bits of work we've done in the iPlayer team over the past few months. So another tool you can use is BBC Alley. This is the BBC's accessibility standards checker. It's on GitHub if you want to have a look. It's an internally developed tool, and basically it checks whether your web pages meet the BBC's accessibility standards. If you want to run BBC Ali, you're going to need NPM. Hands up, who's heard of NPM? About half of you. That's what Al says, about half of you. Cool. So for those of you that haven't, it's basically a place where you can store your code and distribute bundles of code to people. So install NPM if you don't already have it, and then install BBC Ali from the command line npm install BBC Ali -- global. And that makes it available for you to use on your terminal anywhere. And then to run it against the page, simply bbc-ali followed by the URL. So for example, bbc.co.uk. The output may look something like this. So a nice long list of text. This is cut down so that it fits on the screen. But it tells you things that have failed. So in this example, it says design, content resizing, text must be styled with units that are resizable in all browsers. And then it says text style with px unit, and then gives you a path to the element that's failed. It tells you other things like headings must be in an ascending order, and it says the first heading wasn't a main heading, and again it gives you a path to the element that's failed. And at the bottom it tells you how to fix the errors. It gives you links to the BBC's accessibility guidelines with more information. And then it summarises nicely at the bottom, 1 page checked, 5 errors found, 1 warning, etc. If you want to run it frequently against lots of URLs, you can create a config file called ali.js, and in there you can specify page followed by a URL you want to test. So in this example, we've got page bbc.co.uk/iPlayer, page bbc.co.uk/bbc1, for example. If you want to skip certain standard checks, for example, you're going to go back and fix them at a later date, but you want to just skip them for now, you can add in a skip option, and then put in the names of the standards you want to skip. If you need to hide errors from certain parts of the page, for example, you've got an external ads engine or something like that, so it's issues you can't fix, you can put in the hide option and then the ID or the class name of the elements you want to skip. But how do I use this in my deployment process, I hear you saying? Well, what you can do is you can write a custom reporter for BBC Ali, which essentially means you can write some code to specify the format that the results are given to you in. What we did in iPlayer was write a JUnit reporter, which essentially outputs the information in XML format. So for example, it might look something like this. So again, not very easy for us to read, but for a machine it's much easier. So you've got test suites and test cases and failures and all this kind of stuff going on in there. Then on our continuous integration server, we've got a JUnit plugin, which allows us to actually see how many tests have passed and failed over time. It draws a nice little graph like this, so we can see when we're getting better and when we're getting worse. And we can actually drill into the results by page and see what's passed and failed. So here we looked at the sci-fi and fantasy highlights page, and we got 2 failures. If we then click into the tests, we can actually see a detailed error message again, like we did before. So it says error on, then the URL, goes to the description, gives you a path to the element that's failed, and again a link to find out more information. So we thought it was pretty good, but we needed somewhere to store all this reporter and config. So what we've created is a new repo on GitHub called Ali Test Web. And this is essentially a wrapper around both BBC Ali and Google Lighthouse, which allows you to run either or both from one single place and store that configuration. So let's have a look at how to use this. Again, this is open source, so you're welcome to have a go. Install npm again if you haven't got it already. Grab a copy of the code from GitHub, git clone, install all the dependencies that it requires, npm install. That's the setup done. Now we just need to set up your configuration. So make a folder in the config directory with the name of your product, and then create your configuration file. Configuration file will look something like this. We've got a base URL, so the website address, the domain that you're going to run these tests on. A paths option, so the pages on the URL you're going to test, so /iPlayer, for example. You've then got that options property, so if you want to specify those options for BBC Ali, you can store those in there. Alternatively, if you want to store it in JavaScript rather than JSON, you can do that and just export the configuration values. And then to get Ali test web to run BBC Ali, you do ali config equals reference to your config, followed by npm run start BBC Ali. That's it. Let's see, I'm going to run BBC Ali against your domain, against your paths with the configuration you've set up. If you want to run it in headless mode, for example, you don't want it popping up over whatever you're doing, you can just put :headless at the end of that previous command. If you want it to output in JUnit format, :JUnit on the end. And if you want to run it on a CI server, for example, or somewhere where you don't have loads of libraries installed, you can use the :CI bit on the end, and that'll actually run it inside a Docker container. So that's BBC Ali. How do we run Lighthouse? Very similar thing. Specify your config, and then npm run start Lighthouse JUnit, and that'll run Lighthouse on your domain, on your path with your config, and output JUnit. And again, if you want it headless to run on your CI server, or so it doesn't pop up in the way, :JUnit headless on the end. So we've actually got both BBC Ali and Google Lighthouse set to run on our server every day, so we can see overnight if something's broken. And just like for the BBC Ali tests, we can drill down and look at the Google Lighthouse results and see the pass fail over time with the graph. So we can drill into those Google Lighthouse results again, same format, what's passed, what's failed. And again, look at the error message that's come out of Lighthouse. So error on URL. Gives you a message, for example, low contrast text. It's difficult or impossible for many users to read. And then gives you a link to find out more again. And it shows you the paths to all the elements that are failing. So it makes it really easy to find out more details and find out what's broken. What we've done is add both BBC Ali and Lighthouse jobs to our deployment pipeline. So after we've pushed all our code to our test environment, it will run BBC Ali and Google Lighthouse. And then if anything's failed, it will go red instead of green. And we won't push anything out live until we fixed it. As I mentioned earlier, it's open source. So if anyone wants to contribute to Ali Test Web, please do. You can add configurations for your own products, your own websites, raise pull requests to fix some issues. And you can raise pull requests to make other improvements if you want to. And our aim with this is that over the next few months, we want to have 100% of the BBC Ali test passing, 100% of Google Lighthouse accessibility audits passing across 100% of the iPlayer website. So we've currently got it across most of the site, but we want to get the whole website fully 100% on BBC Ali and Lighthouse soon. But that's all good. But as Dijkstra said, testing shows the presence, not the absence of bugs. So it might have all passed, but there might still be some issues. So of course, as well as automated testing, we do some manual testing. And BBC Ali actually has a manual mode. To run it, bbc-ali, followed by the URL, then --manual. And what that does is pop up the web page you're testing. And then at the bottom of the screen, it asks you some questions with buttons that say yes or no, and a space to leave your comments. So these yes, no, and comments results are all recorded. And at the end, once you've gone through all the questions, it outputs your results. And then you can share this with your developers, your product people, whatever, and get them to fix it. And starting today, I've actually asked our QA team to run this on every single new page and new feature we're releasing. So let's have a look at some questions BBC Ali asks. One question it might say is information conveyed with color also identifiable from context or markup? So have you made a mistake like this Winter Olympics medals chart and just put a gold, a silver, and a bronze medal? Or have you done this and put some kind of textual markup representation like a G, an S, and a B in there so that people that are colorblind, for example, can see what's going on? Other things it asks, do color combinations pass color contrast checks? Do all text links have some kind of mouse over state change? Do all focusable elements have a clearly identifiable visual style when they have focus? Does the page function without JavaScript or CSS? Is the content visible and usable with the page zoomed to 200%? And the same for if the text is resized to 200%. So there's a lot to think about there. Our QA team also tests all the new features and pages that we're releasing with NVDA on Windows and with VoiceOver on Mac. And if they're not unsure about some of the things that come out of that, they'll also try it on some other screen readers. So let's have a look now at the culture we've been developing. So we do all kinds of knowledge sharing. So we run cross-discipline accessibility training sessions. I've done some screen reader training sessions with the entire of the iPlayer team. So that's product people, project people, developers, testers, all that kind of thing. And I've done some accessibility basics for web developers as well. So talking through things like what I've mentioned today, semantic markup, etc. The iPlayer accessibility champions also have monthly catch-ups. We talk about ongoing issues that we need to fix, any ideas we've got for accessibility improvements, and any new accessibility-related knowledge that we've found. We also have cross-BBC accessibility champion meetups. These might include talks from external speakers, for example. In the past, we've had Microsoft and Barclays talking about what they're doing. We also have some lightning training sessions at these catch-ups. For example, in the past, we've had the BBC accessibility team do a lightning talk on how to use a screen reader, for example. Also, when we start thinking about any new feature or task on iPlayer, we break it down and we ask ourselves various accessibility-related questions, including, do we need to write the code in a special way to make it accessible? Do we need to write extra code to make it accessible? Do the colors pass contrast checks? And we use this tool from the Paciello group to input the foreground and background colors and see if they pass the AA tests. Does it have a simple, consistent layout? And that's just some of the questions. And what we've actually done is we've got these Home Office posters, which have been shared at one of these previous accessibility meetups. So the Home Office made these posters, and it talks about all different kinds of do's and don'ts around designing for people on the autistic spectrum, designing for screen readers, designing for people with low vision, designing for people with physical or motor disabilities, designing for people that are deaf or hard of hearing, and for those with dyslexia. And as I say, we've actually printed these off and they're stuck up right next to our desks, so they're always in the forefront of our mind. Now let's go back to that quote from Tim Berners-Lee. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect of the web. As you can tell, at iPlayer, we agree with Tim, and by doing these three things, by building accessibility in from the start, by testing what we're doing, and by building that team culture, we're doing our best to make sure that everyone can access iPlayer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sid. Awesome timing, awesome talk, almost awesome timing. David, are you cool to do on this side? So we have 10, 15 minutes for questions. So put your hand up and one of our glamorous microphone holders will run around and give you the microphone.
Is that me? Is that on? Yeah. So question regarding the screen readers. When a player you've already watched some of a video and you come back to it, is that notified to a screen reader somehow that you have X amount of time or something?
That is a good question, and one I don't know the answer to, but I can find out. If it doesn't, that's probably something we should look at. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, just if you're not aware of how much you've watched, then
yeah.
I think if that is that something that would be quite cool if that was in there.
Just thought of an answer. When we navigate, so if you go through this page and it reads out the program name, it will tell you how long you've got left on that program.
Okay.
So before you click play, it will already have told you.
Nice. Okay. So I've got a few, if that's okay. Another one I had was regarding array labels. So you had a few on, you're mentioning where you had a set of links where they were all the same. The content was viewable consistently. Were there any discussions with, just say, a content team to, rather than try to resolve this through loads of array labels, to change the content to the actual meaning of what you were going to see?
Yeah, we chatted to the user design team, but we didn't want too much text all over the page. Mm-hmm. So we tried to keep it simple and just a view all and then some hidden text. It felt like the best way forward.
Okay.
Last question. Just one more question, then we'll see if anyone else got.
So interesting regarding the player itself, you were talking about one of the questions you have other testers as well, who the manual testing. One of the questions, does it function without JavaScript? What actually does happen with the player?
Funnily enough, the player doesn't actually work without JavaScript. So yeah, you can't do much on iPlayer without JavaScript. But the idea is we can allow people to do as much as they can without watching the content, so they can still find out what's on there.
Cool. All right. No, thanks for that.
Christian, okay, go for it, yep.
Oh yeah, I work in the Department of Education, and we just embarked on refreshing our intranet, and we're going for the alpha stage now. And before, when we built the intranet, accessibility didn't really feature heavily in designing our the intranet pages. I just want to know, with regards to like Google Lighthouse, will that work on internet sites as well as websites?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. As long as you yourself can access the web page, Google Lighthouse will work.
And just one more question: will your slide pack be slides be available?
I can tweet them, share them.
Yeah. So we'll be recording the video and publishing that afterwards. Can potentially send out slides to people that want them as well. Yeah. Question over there, and then to this one down here.
Hi Andy, I'm Jakub from the Home Office. So great talk firstly, thanks for that. Do you have a feel for what level of accessibility you want the iPlayer to get to? So would you assume it's WCAG AA compliant now, or are you going for 2.1? Or is it more important you're looking at the feedback you get from users, and as long as they're happy, you don't care about a kind of descriptive label? Just curious on what the BBC is going for.
So it's a bit of both. So we'll look at complaints from users and try and get those fixed. We also try and meet the BBC accessibility guidelines with BBC Alley. Once the iPlayer team have done both of that, we'll start looking and seeing if we can expand it to be fully WCAG 2.1.
So the BBC guidelines, if you meet all of those, they're WCAG 2.1 then, are they?
Not quite. They're a subset.
Yeah.
They're based on WCAG, but they're kind of like a simplified version of WCAG, so less subjective.
So,
Catherine, do you want to?
So they meet all the WCAG 2.1 objective guidelines up to level AAA.
Okay. But I think there's some extra stuff in WCAG that's probably not in your guidelines.
Yes, just with the objective guidelines.
Right, cool.
And there's some in the BBC guidelines that are more than the WCAG as well.
Cool. Yep. Question it.
Hi there.
Hiya.
Really great presentation, and it's so good to see all the great work, the comprehensive work at the BBC. I just had a couple of questions. Actually, I'm Adi Latif, work for AbilityNet, and we actually provide BBC with some screen reader testing, training, sorry. And my question was, two quick ones. One is alt text, so if you're missing alt text, who do you go to for the alt text, the actual descriptions? Is it the developer that writes them, or do you go to design? That's the first question. The second one is, what's the difference between the BBC guidelines and say WCAG? Why are there BBC guidelines? Are they capturing stuff that WCAG isn't capturing? And is BBC exempt from WCAG? What's the sort of grey area there? Sorry, is that 3 questions and a half? Is it? Right?
So question 1, the alt text, we'll always go back to the product team or the user experience team. Developers won't write that themselves because the user experience team will know better. The second question, kind of mentioned it already, BBC accessibility guidelines kind of have, what did you say, they meet the objective?
They're equivalent to WCAG 2.1.
WCAG 2.1.
AAA, all the objective guidelines, and they have some own guidelines as well.
Yeah. So they meet the WCAG 2.1 objective guidelines, and there's also some extra ones in the BBC guidelines.
Great. What kind of extra ones are there? Sorry, you might not know off the top of your head, but
Yeah.
is it to do with multimedia more, or is it?
I don't know offhand. Yeah, you'd have to have a look at their website. Have a look.
Should we do one more, Alistair? We've got one more.
I thought I might answer that if you like.
Oh,
hello, I'm Emma on the BBC's accessibility team, and I had to do a cross-reference because I needed to answer this question because I worked on BBC Alley, or not the code, but I helped project manage it, basically. The BBC's accessibility guidelines cover everything that's in WCAG 2.0, with a very strong focus toward media, because it is for the BBC and it is for UK audience. So some of what our stuff has is a little bit stricter than WCAG 2.0, but we're aiming for AA standard rather than AAA standard. Some of what's coming in with the 2.1 WCAG stuff that's in there is already in the BBC guidelines because we've already covered it. But we have a piece of work that we need to do now to make sure that everything that's in 2.1 is covered by our guidelines. But our guidelines are actually a little bit stricter than WCAG. So we expect a lot more from our people. And yeah, we are kind of exempt from some stuff, but that's because we're at the cutting edge. So sometimes we're figuring out how you do it. And so long as we're continuing to keep doing the best that we can, that exemption stays in place. But yeah, we do respond to customer complaints and we do pick up on things like that and we do try and make changes accordingly.
Any other questions? Cool. Another one down here.
Hello. I have a question regarding transcripts. Is that something that iPlayer do?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if we do, actually.
Do you think it would be good?
We don't do that, do we? No.
I don't think so for iPlayer, but for some online content, yes.
Yeah, so some online content there is, but not currently on iPlayer.
iPlayer has settings.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, questions behind you, David?
This is one really specific question, but when you're using iPlayer and specifically the seek bar, how on earth do you talk back, given that usually you'd use a visual input of lots of moving numbers and say you wanted to seek to 2 minutes 20? How on earth do you do that from a talkback perspective?
That's a good question. It's actually a separate team that makes the player. It's not actually my iPlayer web team. But if you tweet me, I can ask the guys that make it how they do it.
Nice. You did ask. So I'm really interested about the figures, how you were saying you've got a lot more users now because it's a lot more accessible. Is that data actually available online about how much more you get in like positive interactions from your users?
I don't think that number's documented anywhere. So that was just one A/B test we did on curating or not curating those category pages. So that number isn't there. But I can tweet it if you want for everyone.
Any other questions? I've got a question. So it's really nice to see how you allow people to pick their size preference for captions.
Yep.
Do you have any stats for that? How many people do change the size of your captions?
Again, I don't know, but I can find out. Cool.
I've got a quick question. So you talked about automated testing, you talked about manual testing. Do you do sort of disabled user-led expert testing as well?
So we haven't done any recently, but we're currently trying to get some time booked in to do that, yeah. Be in contact.
Awesome. Is that all questions done?
Oh, no.
Brilliant. We are bang on for time. This is amazing. Okay. So, we've got one more. Apologies.
You were talking about team culture.
Yeah.
How do you ensure, what the best practice do you provide for a team culture? What are the process, what are the procedure to form a team?
So I think the way I've done it is just by doing lots of training and just like, so before people started thinking about it all the time, just reminding them every ticket we pick up, every feature, have you thought about this, have you thought about this, getting those posters up on the wall, and just doing training with people as well. So people that like product people or user experience people that don't think it's really relevant for them, just doing screen reader training and all that kind of stuff really helps them to think about it.
And is that training that you mandate or voluntary or kind of just suggestively encourage?
It's stuff I've run and encouraged the whole team to come to. Cool.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Any other questions? Cool. Okay, so we have a break for half an hour. Please be back by 1:15, but before you go, please put your hands together and say a massive, massive thank you to Andy. Thank you so much.